All right, today we're pulling back the curtain on something that's, absolutely critical in healthcare, but also kind of confusing. The hospital budget. We are going to demystify all those numbers and really see how financial planning impacts patient care. And we'll do it all through the eyes of a manager who's right there on the front lines. So let's kick things off with a question. I want you to picture this. A hospital unit, total chaos, a patient's life is on the line, and a nurse manager is trying to take charge. In that exact moment, what do you think is the most powerful tool they have? Okay, you're probably thinking a defibrillator, right? Or some life-saving drug. Or maybe just their years and years of experience. And look, you're not wrong, but the one tool that makes all of that other stuff possible, it's a spreadsheet. Yep, you heard me, a spreadsheet. Because in healthcare, budgeting isn't just about dollars and cents. It's literally a matter of life and death. Okay, so let's dive into that. To really get why a simple spreadsheet has so much power, we've got to unpack what we're calling the manager's money puzzle. So let me introduce you to Jeff Tate. He's a nurse manager from the case study we're looking at, and he has this really practical, everyday problem. His staff are wasting precious time walking all the way down the hall to another unit just to get ice and water for patients. I mean, think about that. He knows a new ice machine would fix everything, make things way more efficient. But here's the thing. He can't just go out and buy one. He has to plan for it. And that plan, well, that's the budget. Now, the official definition is pretty dry. Something like a quantitative plan for how resources will be acquired and used. But here's what's really important to get. A budget is not just a history book of what you spent last year. No, it's a roadmap for the future. It's all about making sure you have the right stuff, the right people, the right equipment, the right money, exactly when you need it. So how do managers actually put together this financial blueprint for a whole hospital unit? Let's take a look. Well, hospitals usually take one of two main approaches. The most common is what's called an incremental budget. Basically, you take last year's numbers, tweak them a little bit up or down, and you're done. It's simple for sure, but it has a downside. It can create this use it or lose it mindset, where managers just spend everything so they don't lose that funding next year. On the other hand, you have the zero-based budget. This is intense. You start from scratch and you have to justify every single penny. It's super thorough, but man, is it a lot of work. So where is all this money actually going? Well, this is the operating budget we're looking at. This is the money for all the day-to-day stuff. And just look at that giant slice of the pie. Around 70% of it goes to one thing, paying its people. Salaries, benefits. That's the single biggest expense for a hospital, by a long shot. And you could argue it's also its most important investment. But wait, what about Jeff's ice machine? That's not a day-to-day expense. It's too big for the operating budget. That kind of thing comes from a totally separate piggy bank, the capital budget. You can think of this like a family's savings for a new car or a down payment on a house. It's for the big ticket items, new buildings, shiny new MRI machines, you name it. In this is where the really hard decisions get made. Because that capital budget, it's not a bottomless pit of money. So managers like Jeff have to fight for what they think is most important. So what does he do? Does he ask for new TVs in the rooms to boost patient satisfaction scores? Or does he fight for a new patient lift to protect his staff from career-ending injuries? I mean, both are completely valid, right? But he might only get the money for one. And those kinds of choices bring us right back to the most complex and, the most expensive part of this whole financial blueprint, budgeting for people. Okay, if you want to understand salary budgets, there is one number you absolutely have to know. It's 2080. 2080. This is kind of the magic number. It's how many hours one full-time employee works in a single year. 40 hours a week times 52 weeks in a year. So those 2,080 hours have a special name, one full-time equivalent, or FTE for short. And this is the absolute foundation of any staffing budget. See, managers don't budget for Jane the nurse. They budget for a 1.0 FTE for a registered nurse position. That job could be filled by one person working full-time or maybe two people each working part-time. It's a standard unit of measurement for work. So, what happens when you don't have enough FTEs to get all the work done? You guessed it, overtime. And this example shows just how fast those costs can spiral out of control. Let's say a nurse makes $22 an hour. For overtime, they get time and a half, so that's $33 an hour. Now, if a unit just uses 35 hours of overtime in one 2-week pay period, that's over $1,000 right there. And over a whole year, that balloons to more than $30,000. You can see why managing staffing is one of the most important jobs a manager has. A budget isn't one of those set it and forget it kind of things. Not at all. Once the year kicks off, that's when the real work actually begins. Now the name of the game is staying on financial track. And the key word you need to know here is variance. It's a fancy term for something really simple, the difference between what you planned to spend and what you actually spent. It's just the gap between the plan and reality. Here's a perfect example right from our source material. So the manager budgeted about $34,500 for supplies for the month. But when the final bills came in, they'd actually spent closer to $37,000. That difference, that's the variance. And when you crunch the numbers, that works out to a negative 6.9%. The unit was almost 7% over budget on supplies for that 1 month. Now, in accounting speak, this is called an unfavorable variance. And when that happens, the manager's job suddenly turns into being a detective. They have to dig in, figure out why it happened, and then explain it to their bosses. It's a huge part of being accountable. But here's the thing, and this is really important. Unfavorable doesn't automatically mean bad. Not at all. In our case study, Jeff saw that his drug costs were 15% over budget. Definitely an unfavorable variance. But his explanation was simple. The number of surgeries they performed was up by 30%. Of course they spent more on drugs because they were way busier. That's a story that explains the numbers perfectly, and it's a variance that everyone is actually happy to see. And that brings us to our final section, where we really connect all these numbers and spreadsheets back to the real world of taking care of patients. So let's talk about budgets, bedsides, and you. There's a quote from our source material that just sums this all up perfectly. It says, "You are the front line of budget control. Manage it wisely." And that's the point, isn't it? This isn't just a job for a manager sitting in an office somewhere. Being smart with resources is part of everyone's job on the team. And that impact, it happens in really practical ways every single day. When a nurse carefully documents everything, that helps make sure the hospital gets paid correctly for the care it provides. When staff are thoughtful about using supplies, that cuts down on waste. And yeah, when they speak up about things that aren't working, like, hey, we're wasting a ton of time walking to get ice, they're actually helping management create a smarter budget for next time. Because at the end of the day, a budget is so much more than just a bunch of numbers on a page. You could even say it's a moral document. It's a plan for people, for how we care for patients, and for how we support the staff who do that incredible work. So we'll leave you with a final thought. How does your own workplace balance the hard,